Fans of MMA don't realize just how stressful Dana White's job must be. Managing hundreds upon hundreds of huge egos who just so happen to be trained killers is always going to be a recipe for disaster from time to time. And with that in mind, here are some moments that the UFC no doubt wish could be completely and utterly deleted from existence. Number 10. Don Frye. The legendary former UFC champion Don Frye is among the most revered figure of MMA's earliest era, a pioneering force that has comparable success on both US and Japanese shores. A hulking man who has just had a surprisingly well-rounded skill set for the time. Whenever he makes an appearance on a podcast or an interview format, he can always be counted on to deliver a uniquely insightful tale about MMA in its earliest years. However, Frye found himself in the headlines for the wrong reasons after recently attacking a fan at UFC 270. Not much is known about the specifics as to what happened, but if the reports are to be believed, the fan in question was drunk and made the mistake of challenging Frye to a fight there and then. That, of course, was a stupid idea. But the video certainly wasn't the best look for the promotion, all things considered, and if we had to guess, they would have certainly preferred it never happened. Or at the very least, if some eagle-eyed fan hadn't been there to record the whole thing. Number 9. Jon Jones. For years, Jon Jones was perceived by the masses as a wide-eyed and incredibly ambitious young man who was doing an incredible job at realizing his dream of becoming the youngest champion in the history of the UFC. However, by the time he reached the goal at the age of 23, slowly, the general public began to suspect that his incredibly nice and polite demeanor was fake. Before too long, Jon was being accused by many of being a completely different person when the cameras are rolling. And in one infamous moment shared with his greatest rival Daniel Cormier, he proved to all of us just how two-faced he could be. Before Cormier said that he wished he could see Jon so he could spit on his face. What followed was one of the coldest pieces of trash talk you will ever hear. Hell, calling it trash talk would be incorrect. Jones explained how he would actually kill Cormier if he ever did it, not realizing the camera was still on. When this interview eventually surfaced, it proved to the world that Jon Jones wasn't quite as humble and soft-spoken as he let on.
You know I would absolutely kill you if you ever did something like that.
You could never kill me.
Oh, I bet you I could.
Then you should try, Jon. You really should try, Jon.
No, I would literally kill you if you said like that.
Yeah, let's try that, Jon.
Literally kill you.
Let's try that, Jon.
I'm not saying I would fight you. I said I would kill you.
Jon, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, Jon?
Number 8. Georges St-Pierre. As much as Georges St-Pierre is the well-liked superstar who can do no wrong, you can just imagine how his PR team and the UFC were losing their minds when the former champion began speaking to Joe Rogan about his so-called alien abduction, telling the famed podcast host quite candidly about his tendency to lose time, to be sitting somewhere without realizing that several hours have gone past. He began to assert his theory that he was being abducted by aliens. Joe, despite what you might think, actually put it forth that this may well be a symptom of CTE, after all those years of fighting and training. And though this is a much more likely explanation than aliens, the fact that one of the biggest stars in MMA history is on a hugely popular podcast explaining just how bad his CTE is an absolute nightmare situation for the UFC brass. The subject of actual healthcare being provided for retired fighters by the UFC is not one that is usually enjoyed by Dana White, for the most part. And to have a two-weight world champion speaking of such things likely made the famously hot-headed president's blood boil.
I remember that I remember, but I couldn't remember. You understand what I mean? I remembered that something that happened, but now I can't remember what exactly happened.
Right.
Could be a nightmare, could be another sleep paralysis, or
paralysis, yeah.
My imagination. I don't have evidence, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's why we talked about it last time. And that's what happened to me. And I hope it's nightmare. It's nightmare, you know what I mean?
Number 7. Daniel Cormier. Okay, maybe this isn't the most embarrassing moment for the UFC that you'll find on this list, but more than a few people let their opinions be heard when the UFC commentator Daniel Cormier showed up drunk to a media day session prior to the third matchup between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor in the summer of 2021. Conor himself referred to the event shortly after and criticized DC for doing his work on the mic while intoxicated, which, coming from Conor, is pretty hilarious. But all in all, we're sure that Dana and the UFC, like any other sporting organization, would never want to be associated with that, even if the interview in question was a pretty fun encounter. Could you imagine if panelists from the NBA or NFL did their job while openly admitting that they were drunk? No, us neither.
It's me, Daniel. How you guys doing? I'm here. It's time for my media appearance.
Well, we appreciate it, DC. Hey, talk
I'm here. It's Daniel. Hi, guys.
Number 6. Khabib Nurmagomedov. sometimes differences in culture can prove to be jarring, and in the case of the former UFC title challenger Megan Anderson, a meeting with the legendary Khabib Nurmagomedov inside the cage after a fight led to one of the more awkward encounters on this list. Nurmagomedov, who is of course a devout Muslim, will never shake hands with a woman due to his teachings of his religion. However, at the time when this story first emerged, Anderson was not aware of this, and understandably, she was a bit confused as to why the former UFC lightweight champion would snub her in such a blatant fashion. Thankfully, the entire controversy was cleared up when Khabib explained to Megan exactly what had actually gone down on that night.
So I went up to him, I just grabbed his hand and shook it, and he looked at me like I had done the worst thing that I could ever do on the face of the earth. I was like, and I remember thinking to myself, I was like, wow, he really doesn't like me. This is so weird. Okay. And I walked out, and then later on, someone told me that he was Muslim and that it was like a respect thing that they didn't shake other women's hands. And oh my, as soon as I found that out, I felt like the worst person like on earth. I was like, oh my God, I feel like a horrible person.
Remember, if you're enjoying our content and want to see more, be sure to leave a like before subscribing to the channel so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Number 5. Mike Perry. Any fighter with the words former UFC or UFC veteran attached is always going to be linked to the promotion, no matter how the relationship with the organization ended. And for the Platinum Mike Perry, a series of increasingly disturbing public altercations, as well as his stuttering form inside the octagon, left the UFC with little choice but to give him the axe. And sure enough, upon signing for the bare-knuckle boxing promotion, BKFC, Perry's habit of getting into trouble did not relent. This time, it was the Ultimate Fighter contestant Julian Lane who ended up picking a fight with the welterweight. The guy who, let me bang bro. Need we say more? Anyway, despite Platinum taking on a commentator's role at the event in question, that didn't stop him from leaving his post and jumping into the crowd to attack Lane, who had been provoking him prior to that. All in all, this is just another case of Mike Perry being Mike Perry, but we're certain that Dana and co. are not too pleased with their association with this well-known ticking time bomb. Number 4. Conor McGregor. From the perspective of the UFC, a rostered fighter posting a video of themselves clearly intoxicated while smoking a massive blunt usually wouldn't be a major cause for concern. However, when that star happens to be Conor McGregor, all of a sudden you've got a media circus on your hands. And though Conor has never been afraid to, let's just say, document his love for whiskey and other unsporting substances, every time he makes an Instagram post like this one, you just know that Dana White is somewhere tearing his hair out, or well, you get the picture. With an eye on his potential return for this year, Conor has promised that he will be leaving his beloved Proper 12 Irish whiskey to one side during his preparations. Whether that will be enough to see him mount a successful return or not remains to be seen, yet there will always be fireworks, no matter which way it goes. Number 3. BJ Penn. BJ Penn's later years have in many ways been defined by the many losses he sustained inside the cage, as well as the numerous personal controversies that have caused many fans of this sport to openly worry about his well-being. However, the most shocking and upsetting incident of all came when a very drunk Penn was filmed getting knocked out in Hawaii by an unknown assailant who the former champion was repeatedly enticing to attack him. And though the phrase, "ask and you shall receive," would be a bit cruel for this one, when the man in question obliged him, Penn hit the floor immediately. To make matters worse, once BJ regains his senses, he then tracked the man down and began to beat him up after securing the takedown, putting his stellar Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background to use. All in all, it proved to be yet another worrying milestone in what has been an incredibly tough decline to experience, especially when you consider just how talented BJ was in his prime. Number 2. Paulo Costa. In the wild and sometimes weird world of post-fight excuses, could it be said that Paulo Costa is in a league of his own? Well, after turning in a truly underwhelming performance in his first shot at UFC Gold against the middleweight king Israel Adesanya, Costa took to his social media to admit that he had drunk an entire bottle of wine the night before the biggest fight of his life in an effort to get some much-needed sleep. Whether due to an overly active mind or pre-fight anxiety, somehow, the top contender to the middleweight throne decided to remedy his situation by doing the one thing you should never do the night before a big fight. Needless to say, the UFC and the sports fan base at large weren't overly thrilled by this revelation and accused Borrachina of being extremely unprofessional. Things escalated further when Costa, in his comeback matchup against Marvin Vettori, pretty much refused to make weight, breaking the terms of the contract there and then, forcing Vettori to accept a 205-pound bout during fight week so he could remain on the card. Costa may have put up one hell of a fight in the battle, but his reputation took an almighty hit due to his attitude, something that may quite take a lot of time to recover from. Number 1. Jon Jones. And finally, we come to the second entry on this list that relates to Jon Jones. And trust us, we could have added a whole lot more if we were so inclined. Jon is an absolute magnet to controversy, something that made him quite a liability these days. While there were certainly lower moments from this former 205-pound champion over the years, From the perspective of the promotion, having a long and drawn-out video of one of your biggest stars taking and later failing a sobriety test before then being arrested is not a good look whatsoever. Considering some of the things Jones has said to policemen over the years, he cut a relatively respectful figure here. But all in all, this 2020 clip was yet another moment that really made many fans change their overall opinion of this once revered superstar. Can he rebound and win heavyweight gold? Who knows? But if one thing is for certain, it's that Jones has done irreparable damage to his reputation already. That's about do it for this video. Again, if you enjoyed today's video and want to see more, be sure to leave a like and a comment before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thanks for watching.